Oh, it's already started. So. Alrighty, let me just double check that the stream's running. Let's see. Nice. I think we're live. All right, let's do it. Let me see here. Yeah, we're live. All right, so hello everyone. Wait, let me just, someone's asking if this is starting soon. Okay, yeah, no, we're on. Sorry, I'm still a bit clunky with the YouTube and Google Meets integration. But thank you everyone for your patience. Really excited to see everyone here today. As you can see, I'm joined by an amazing panel, our very last panel of the summer, um, with some of the folks in our community. You guys might have actually met all of Annie, Sanjeev, and Will at some of our in-person events because they were there. But without further ado, I'll do a quick round of intros, and then I also have a few questions for the panelists. But also at any point, feel free to put your questions in the chat as well. Okay, so I guess we'll get started. I'll start with Will. So Will is a new grad software engineer at Instacart, where he works on the transactions platform. Obviously, a very critical piece of the payments infrastructure of the company. He's also a UBC computer science alum, and for his entire time in school was heavily involved with events such as these events, connecting students with career resources and industry professionals. As an executive of the Computer Science Students Association. As well, he's heavily involved in and passionate about machine learning and artificial intelligence research in medicine. So thank you, Will, for being here. We're also joined by Sanjeev. Sanjeev is a new grad software engineer at Apple, based out of Vancouver. You guys might have seen him at our last couple in-person events. I think he was at both of them actually this summer. He's from Edmonton and a University of Alberta computer science alum who's not only working at Apple currently, but also interned at the company in San Diego, where he worked on task orchestration with Apache Airflow. Previous to that, he worked as a software developer intern at Siemens, and presently he's part of a data engineering team at Apple. And finally, we have Annie. Annie's a current software engineer at Google, previous at Amazon, also based out of Vancouver. She's not only a software engineer, but also an internal career coach. She's a UBC computer science and math alum, who I'm sure many of you guys know from her LinkedIn or her Thrive Up in Tech newsletter, events, and podcasts. I'm very excited to have her on this panel as the veteran of the group, as she's been in the industry for a few years and has even switched jobs. So everyone, welcome and thanks for being here. Chat's going wild for the panelists, which I'm glad to see. So yeah, I guess just diving into some questions. And remember, folks on the stream, feel free to ask your questions as well. So the first question I'll ask is for Will and Sanjeev. So both of you guys have had an intense new grad job search, at the end of which you came out with big tech offers. So my first question to you guys is, how did you prepare for your job search, both before and during?
Sure, I guess I can start off first.
Yeah,
So
sure.
yeah, so in terms of preparation, honestly, I don't think I was prepared, which I think I wish I was. But I think definitely obviously you got the usual, the internships, right, and the projects. But you definitely do want to know the cycles, right, that companies are starting to hire. I think if you knew that, I probably would have applied very quick to a lot of these, because your chances of getting an offer, or at least getting an interview, right, are usually the highest in the first 24 hours. So those are definitely the things that I think I would have done, because I don't think I was prepared, to be honest. I think during the search was different, right? So it's a lot of networking. I think I got the most interviews through basically knowing a guy who knew another guy, if that makes sense. So pretty much either you cold email basically a lot of recruiters or maybe professionals, or you have friends who work at certain companies. or maybe the team that's hiring, right? That's how I got a lot of my interviews that way compared to just cold applying. So that's generally what I did in terms of that. And also during the search, I was also working on a few projects as well to bump up my resume in certain places I thought I was lacking. So for example, I think like distributed systems, things like that. So that's a quick summary, at least for me.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that. How about you, Sanjeev?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of similar to what Will said. Like, first thing is like, knowing when the cycles of companies hiring, especially starting from the previous summer itself, is an important thing. A lot of interviews I got before was because I was one of the first people to apply. And that meant a lot of just job searching and being on the net like almost 24/7. But I guess before the search, what exactly I was doing is like I had a bunch of free time during my internship at Apple. So, I just wanted to stay sharp with the lead code skills in case interviews come out. And my search was like even restricted to Canada itself. So not many companies did open up super early in the cycle. So I did have a decent time to prep lead code and be confident in it in case I do get interviews for the later, right? And yeah, like Will said, apply first if you're doing a cold application, but networking is an important thing because I did get a couple of interviews just by emailing the recruiters emails, like, directly cold emailing recruiters because LinkedIn doesn't really work because they get too many messages. So yeah, apply as early as you can, know the companies, like know the cycle of companies, because mostly it's similar to the internship cycle. And if you've been grinding out the internship part of it, you probably will be on a similar pace to grinding out the new grad search too. A lot of companies open these positions side by side. So it's good to anticipate those timelines.
Definitely. Yeah, that's really good advice. I think the theme there is definitely apply early, know your cycles, and also network if you can. I think that's actually like advice that's very contrary to what I heard when I was sort of applying just a couple years ago. But the market was a very different place back then. I'm sure, as you guys know. So yeah, thanks for that. I guess just switching gears for a moment, I did want to get you involved here as well, Annie. I know like part of your background, as I mentioned, you started at Amazon and eventually switched to Google. And currently you're not only a software engineer, but also a career coach. So I wanted to ask you just kind of for those of us who are unaware, tell us about your role as a career coach.
For sure. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you guys. So for career coach, it is Google has an internal platform that you can if you meet a requirement and you pass and you did the training, you're able to sign up to be the coach. And on this platform, I'm able to do a career coach to all Googler, all those roles. So they coming from a background from software engineer, UX, PM, even manager. And I took a coaching courses last year and I got certificate this year. So I'm able to apply the coaching foundation tools and with the experience and knowledge I have to coaching people. And it's very rewarding because you get to connect with people and you're able to help people in person. Like, oh, no, not in person, like one-on-one. So yeah, it is very rewarding journey so far.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool to hear. I didn't know Google had that. That's very interesting. So it's cool that you get to kind of not only talk with other software engineers or prospective software engineers, but like other careers too. Like I didn't know that. That's really cool. I'm sure your insights will be very valuable then as we ask more questions. I guess like moving on, kind of shifting back to the theme of new grad job search, and this can kind of be for anyone here, having gone through like a job search yourself, either for new grad internships or maybe just kind of a switch in your role. What were some ways, I guess, in hindsight, that you realize you didn't really have to spend so much time on, or if you have any ways you wish you spent your time a little bit differently or better?
I guess I could start with that. So I guess speaking about things that I wish I'd spent more time on, I know people say like, if you're like hunting a job in like the computing science field, you don't really give a shit about your classes and, not worry about your GPA and things like that. But the one thing that I wish I had done differently in sense spent more time is to carve out a niche based on the classes, right? Like try to take advanced level classes during your third year itself, so that you do get to you get exposed to the fields that are kind of niche, something like compilers or systems or distributed databases and things like that, if your university offers that choice. Because that way, if you do end up liking that class before your third year itself, like during your third year itself, you know what kind of roles you might want to target. And most people, like on a general sense, most new grads really skip those classes if they can, just to get course along their degree and like just find a job. But you'll be one of those people who actually has experience in that niche field, which helps you stand out to those specific roles like instantly. For example, in my specific scenario, I took a compilers class, and although I didn't take it during my third year, I did take it in my fourth year, in my first semester of my fourth year. And I got a lot of compiler engineering interviews, which was surprising because not many people had that experience. And honestly, it was like, even though I applied late, I heard back literally the next day. So I'm like, there's a demand for these people, even at a new grad level. So I think trying to figure out interest based on classes to carve out your niche is a big thing,
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool advice. I mean, I definitely agree with that. I think the prevailing advice, as you said, is to kind of, yeah, not give a shit about your courses, which I also didn't really either. But I will say, at least at UBC, which is where I went, and I'm sure at UofA as well, the upper level courses are where you actually learn some really cool things, like 300, 400, and they're typically easier than like your core 1xx, 2xx courses. So yeah, definitely agree with that advice and sentiment. Anything folks want to add to that?
I can share a little bit
Yeah.
experience. I remember at that time, I spent a lot of time do lead code, and I don't know how to, improve my skills within a short amount of time. So the way I look at it is I apply the DFS approach on the whole technique. So basically, go through all the like technique, like say BFS, DFS, graph, and different type, different category, and can examine if you know it. If you don't know it, you to learn the foundation. And then I personally believe it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. So if you really have a good understanding of different technique, and then you start to build up from that. And when you try a medium-sized problem, and then you really digest and deliberately practice the part you're not familiar with. I think that's more efficient. I wish I could have done this while I was in university, because at that time I was very stressed and panic, and I practice a lot. I feel it's not very efficient use of my time, and I really want to share that to people.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think folks can definitely relate to that. Yeah, I mean, spoken like a true software engineer using a DFS analogy. I love it. Yeah, I guess next question. So in sort of your most recent job searches, I wanted to ask, what do you guys think? And Sanjeev's already talked about this as well with his sort of with maybe some of his specialized courses. But what are some things that you think made your particular profile stand out to eventually land your current role or any other offers?
I mean, I guess I can start. I have a very unique path where I kind of just prioritize like cool stuff and like learning versus like actually big names. So in a way, it handicapped me, but other ways, I kind of stood up for certain roles, right? So actually look, a lot of the roles I interviewed for were actually machine learning roles, right? I kind of look back, and yeah, I think that was definitely a big contributor, right? Yeah, I think the other thing that helped stand out, I think, was I didn't do any projects, by the way, like in most of my undergrad until like my final year, right? So my final year, I made this like actually really very interesting project to say the least that got interviewed at like Y Combinator, right? And I think that actually stood out like a lot in my final interviews because like started getting more callbacks from like good companies after that. So
Oh wow, that's really cool. So I guess you included that as part of like your resume and like your interview responses. Uh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. I do remember, or I guess what was your, just real quick, what was your Y Combinator?
Okay, basically, I think some people are doing something very similar. So if you look, I think look at Spur. I think they're doing something super similar. I think. But yeah.
Very cool, very cool. And now you get to work at Instacart and some machine learning stuff there as well. So that's great.
Yeah, NDA for that though, but yeah.
Oh, I see. Well, it's on your LinkedIn. Just
Yeah.
just putting that out there. I got that from your LinkedIn. So no NDAs being broken here, or at least you broke it first. Let's just say that. Jacob Fang asks, what's the best school for comp sci and why is it U Alberta? So there's a U Alberta student or big fan in the chat. So thank you for that question. I guess there are some questions in the chat. Maybe we can go through some of those as well. Michelle asks, so leak code seems to be an important factor for interviews. Do you think this is the same for mid-sized companies?
So I guess I could go start with that. From my experience, I haven't interviewed with a lot of big companies, but I've actually been able to get to interview with a decent number of mid-sized companies as well as like smaller companies. And the one general trend that I've noticed is if they do work on a I guess like a software engineering product base, right? Like something like a startup, they usually sometimes do give you like a technical problem, not necessarily lead code. But if they're in the field of like software as a service or something like that, they usually can go ask your lead code. But for software engineering roles in like companies that aren't domain specific to computer science, but they just need software engineers, usually that's the companies that not necessarily ask lead code. They just ask you maybe like your programming experiences, and you actually have more conversations behaviorally to get like for them to get to know you more, and maybe you might do a project here and there. But that's what I've noticed, where anything that's not in the technological focus as like primary, business, like primary objective of their business, they usually skip lead code. You don't necessarily get asked that.
Interesting. So I guess like software developer roles in non-tech companies. Awesome.
Yeah, I think in general on that, there's like I think I noticed recently in the last hiring cycle, I got asked a lot more was it object-oriented design or system design, and a lot more behavioral stuff versus just straight lead code, right? So I noticed there's a lot of focus on signals, right? I was having a good chat with one of the other guys on our server, Leo, right? And he was talking about how they're moving a lot of things to these types of, I guess, like object-oriented design, right? Or sys design, because they're better signals than people just memorizing lead code, right? I think you should still be able to solve a lot of these lead codes because it goes down to your basics, but that's a trend I am noticing in my own interviews as well.
Definitely. Yeah, that's super interesting. I do agree with you there. Like there used to be almost no system design interviews, but now they're, every once in a while you see them for new grad, which is good or bad. Like I personally like system design a lot better than just memorizing lead code patterns. And I think it actually is like better learning as well. So, okay, I guess we'll go back to some more questions then. I guess back to sort of more kind of talk about resources. Do you guys have any like really great resources that you might recommend for someone undergoing the new grad process?
I think the number one resource that kind of helped me was like communities like this that, just to stay up to date to what's going on in like the field, right? Like having like the job channel postings where we get a lot of postings from you on a day-to-day basis, and just being able to talk to people, seeing where they are in the interview process and if a company started hiring or not. I think that's honestly like a really good resource. So just join communities that don't drain your energy. That's one thing. Yeah. There's certain ones you definitely should avoid, but yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point though. I think the communities were the biggest determinant, I think, for me, right? Being around other people who are actually motivated kind of motivates you in a way that elevates your own level, right? If you surround yourself with people of a certain skill level, you may not be as good, but you can eventually, rise to that. The more you soak in from them, right? And I think that was important a lot, right? So kept me motivated to again like do like lead code practice or apply to certain jobs. And again, like the server, like Eric just posts his LinkedIn algorithm is insane, right? He just posts like really good jobs instantly, right? So yeah, I think that was these are like really big things. And the final one's just people, right? I think the biggest resource is people. And so that ties back to the community part, getting anonymous tip-offs, these people are hiring, things like that. I think it's there's a lot of different ways that people can help you around.
Definitely. Wow, appreciate all the love in the panel for the server. Awesome. Yeah, so I guess yeah, moving on. Actually, I had some questions specifically for you, Annie, being sort of in a unique position in the panel, in the sense that you had a chance to switch companies early in your career, having gone from Amazon to Google. So I wanted to ask sort of what were some motivations that led you to make the switch, and is that something you might recommend in hindsight?
Yeah, thanks for the question. For me, I think it's very important to understand what is important to you. I think it's a question that everyone should ask to yourself at any time, like in your career or in your university life. For me, at that time, I was in Amazon, and I asked myself what is very important to me. So I have to say, I like the project that give me, I like growth opportunity. I want to be a better engineer. I want to bigger scope, and I think manager is also very important to me. Me personally think manager plays a very, very important role in anyone's career. So I want to like find a manager that is a better fit for me. So given all the factor, I decide want to take a chance to see what are some better opportunities internally and externally. So I try to apply internally and externally. Eventually, I got offer from Google, and I heard a lot of good things about Google, and there are a lot of different opportunities inside Google. So I'm really curious to see. That's why I decided to switch. I think for anyone who are looking for potential switch, it's very important for you to evaluate what are important to you. Do you care about people you work with, team dynamic, like how the relationship with your manager, the project scope, the career growth, and what skills you want to grow, what are soft skills you want to grow, what are leadership skills you want to grow. Like all those, you list them down and you try to ask yourself what are most important thing to you, and what do you gain from your current environment. And after you do the evaluation, you kind of see, oh, what's your position and how you can create a better opportunity for you to fulfill your need. That's how I see it. I hope this is helpful.
No, definitely. Yeah, I think I've basically agreed with everything everyone's said so far, but truly, I think that's really great advice. Like being able to, that's actually advice I got from one senior engineer at the company I work at as well. When I was thinking about kind of whether or not to accept like a return offer, is precisely what you said. Is like you need to know what's important for you first, and then based on that, kind of make a decision. I think a lot of people skip that step. I think a lot of people just see like the shiny company or the shiny, money, whatever, which isn't a bad thing, but sometimes there's more to it than that, I think. So yeah. Very cool. So thank you for that answer. I will say I know a lot of the folks here are probably students, but that is a sneak peek into sort of more once you're kind of out of new grad and internship search, all of a sudden real things start to matter, right? Like, your soft skills and your skills that you want to develop, not just apply to as many jobs as possible. Cool. I guess some more questions. Actually, I wanted to ask another question related to that, Annie. Having worked at multiple big tech companies, what do you find to be consistent across companies and teams? And then what were some striking differences?
I think the standard and process and insist on high quality and a common thing for a company I work with. I would say the pace is relatively slow because the process is a little bit much, and usually a decision or project involve a different stakeholders. So you need to talk to a lot of people to make a decision. But it's also make the process safe and secure. I would say that's one of the biggest thing that I noticed. For the difference, I've said company culture are quite different, and because in Google I got more flexibility to work on the 20% project. That's how I get to be an internal career coach. So that's a major difference I noticed. But overall, I think they're all really great. For my experience, I think I all learned so much, and in Amazon, I learned so much about leadership principle, and that guided me through how I work and communicate. It's really helpful foundation principle. And in Google, I get to try a lot of different things and grow a lot of skills, technical skill and soft skills. So yeah, it really depends. I hope that's a good answer.
No, definitely. Yeah, I agree with that. That the 20% project thing is really interesting. I wish more companies did that. I wish my company did that. That'd be really fun. But yeah, there is another question in the chat that I wanted to get to. Oh geez, okay, I'll find it later. But I guess moving on to the to some other prep questions. This is for sort of one of the panelists. I know we're all at varying levels of experiences and all at different companies. So I guess I wanted to ask, like, sort of through your respective career paths, what are some observations you've made about folks who do great in their careers, either landing great internships, landing full-time engineering roles, climbing the ladder quickly, or expanding their influence within a team?
I guess I can start. I chat with a lot of like staff senior engineers pretty often. Then also again like a bunch of coffee chats with some kooky people, right? So I think definitely they're very good with people. I think it's the trend. I look at all of it. You get to a certain stage, right? You can either just be better at everyone technically, or it can be better with people, right? And which one's easier? And that tends to be a trend a lot as you reach towards you can stay the IC route, individual contributor route. You can be like a staff engineer, or you could be like a manager, right? And that's generally where things kind of end, right? And generally, the things that separate a lot of these folks are definitely their ability to work with people, right? And to be liked is one thing, but it's just to be very, very good with people skills, right? So I think that's what I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. I noticed that for entry level to mid level, it's a lot about you get things done. You just you move really fast. But if you want to really level up quickly from mid level to senior level, or even more, people skill and soft skills, communication are really crucial, because essentially you're working with people, deliver things together. So I really echo on that.
Another thing that I've noticed is like there's some teams where people belong to like the same product but work on different things. And when things get lost around within the team itself, one thing that has been like I've seen people like do really well at is taking initiative and ownership of things, even though it's not really related to them. Like, taking deep into the code base of some other tool that you don't even maintain and actually trying to figure out what's causing the issue and then raising it to people who are supposed to look at it is one thing that gets them visibility across the whole team and across broader teams actually. And that influence definitely would help you like rise up in your levels wherever you're at.
Awesome. Yeah, really great insights. I mean, I agree with everything here as well. Like, I think the people skills is such a it's almost a shame how undervalued it is, I guess, for entry level roles. Like the fact that we're just doing leak code and like applying early is with like a decent resume. The fact that that's the key to getting like a really good new grad job is kind of a shame, because that has like a very low ceiling, unfortunately. But yeah, another question actually that someone had is, what kinds of new knowledge and new technologies are you learning in your roles? Up to whatever you can share. without breaking NDA, I guess.
I honestly feel like I'm learning new language or new technology at every different team. So every time I switch team or switch company or switch project, I have to pick up something new. So it's continuous learning skill, but you should be willing to learn and pay attention to the transferable skill, how you learn, how you communicate, how you document stuff, and how do you unblock yourself, how do you reach out to help. I think those are transferable skill can help you pick up any new technology at different project. But the reality is I have to learn new technology quite frequently. I'm not sure about other panelists.
Yeah, likewise to what Annie said. The team I joined is something like whatever they use, I haven't used anything before. So yeah, I've been learning the whole tech stack from A to Z, and yeah, it's a learning curve. And I think, like again, what Annie just said before, it really depends on the team and what problem you're solving at that point of time. So yeah, you have to just keep learning yourself, but you still have to, I guess, like while you're still in entry level, you can still learn like the processes and things like that, like how do you do good code reviews and things like that. And that is probably one thing that just keeps on growing, and that's the soft skills. Like soft skills in terms of technical soft skills that you can take away, but the languages and the mastery of it, unless you're in like a very specialized job or role where you have to be proficient in the language, you probably will have to learn something new wherever you go.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything. Like tech wise, I'm learning everything. Like I'm learning a new thing every single week, I think, or maybe every single month for sure. Like especially as I only started like recently, right? I didn't know what most of the tech stack that I even worked with when it came in, right? So I think one of the biggest things though was actually learning how to write design documents, one pagers, and convincing people that your idea is worth pursuing. So I managed to convince them on like a few projects, for example, upon coming in, just by like just asking the senior engineer, like, okay, how does this kind of work? What are you kind of thinking, right? And you just listen in during a lot of these meetings, right, where you're not really expected to contribute, but they're pitching ideas, right? This will give us this much profit. Technically, this way will make it more clear why we're going to save money this by doing this. And I think learning the business wise is actually, I think, the most important take back that I got.
Definitely. Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about using like a technical document to like convince seniors, which shows how like inexperienced I am. But also, yeah, that's a really cool idea. I guess in that vein, then, so do you guys have any advice for folks to sort of expand their influence in teams, especially if they're new to a team or like early in their career? I think we touched on it briefly, but
I think be eager is one thing, like many people, like I guess like after a crucious job search, you're just gonna take it chill and slow, and like maybe especially if you're doing it right after school, you might want to just coast and stuff. But I think when you're starting a new job and you're trying to learn something new, just be eager and go in it with an open mind. Like say if you've done like a lot of backend experience and you're thrown into like a front end team, just don't preemptively hate it before you do it. Like actually go into it with an open mind, try learning something new, and then see how it goes from there. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you all for the insights. I guess we'll take some more questions from the chat. This one comes from Jacob. Jacob Fang, do any of you have experience with switching areas within software? If so, why did you switch and how did you go about it?
I mean, sure, I can start. Like, I had a severe career whiplash, so I started something like medical research stuff. Then I switched to developing high performance SQL, C++ drivers. That if you use Databricks, you're using one of the drivers that I worked on, for example, right? And then now I'm doing like some high level stuff at like Instacart, right? For like more back end engineering. So it's like huge whiplash, I think, across everything. So I mean, I think really the key is you just talk to people who are doing that job, right? And maybe get insights or read up things like that these people write up, like Medium articles or etc. or like Reddit threads. I think CS people is very common, or even like Discord. It's just talking with people and you get an idea about what skills that they're using. and I kind of like learned that way and go backwards. But that being said, I didn't study super like a lot for all of these. Like I kind of when you have a solid foundation, it's not too hard to move at this early stage of your career.
Definitely. Awesome. Thank you for the insights. Speaking of like talking with teams and sort of, some of the soft skills that are important, how important has networking and mentorship been in your career? Can you share any tips for building these connections?
Oh, I can share a little bit about networking tips. Because I'm not sure when you say networking, do you mean in-person meetup or this online webinar? I would say if you go to in-person meetup or online chat, it is very important before you go to any network to have a goal, set a goal for yourself. Do you want to connect with a mentor? Do you want to learn some industry insight? Or do you just want to meet the project partner to build something together? So set a goal for yourself and then be prepared. Prepare a self-introduction so that people easily get to know you, and prepare a question to ask people so that you can get to know them. And when you prepare a question, I noticed that a lot of people, it's very reasonable to but like the question they ask can be better. For example, if someone asks you, say, hey, Eric, hi, I come to meet you. Like say we don't know each other very much, right? So I come to you and come to this meeting. I say, hey, Eric, can you tell me how to be good, how to become how to be get into this role? I just ask you this question directly, but you don't know much about me. So you didn't do any research for my LinkedIn profile. You didn't know anything about me. I just ask you, hey, what should I do so that I can get to this role, right? This is very hard for those people to address. So when you ask questions, you can focus on the people you ask. Say, hey, Eric, how do you like about this job? What do you dislike about this job? What do you think are the skills and qualities required to get into this job? So in that way, you get some general information to help you understand what is the gap, how do you improve, right? If you ask someone a very personal suggestion, those people don't know too much about you. So I would say when you prepare a question, it's important to prepare some general questions and introduction, general questions, and a goal. I think that can make your networking more efficiently.
Awesome. Yeah, really great advice. I'm gonna start doing that myself now. That's something I'll start doing. I love it. Anything else from the panelists, maybe related to either networking or mentorship? I know that's like a pretty big theme nowadays on the server. So
I mean, I think a lot of people are actually very open to helping you out if you, again, like if you do the right research or if you actually show interest in them. So I think I literally get a bunch of messages like, hey, can you give referral? Bro, I'm not responding to that, like just straight, right? Like I'd rather talk with someone, right? See if I can provide any value besides just some meaningless transaction, you know? And that's like literally I'm surprised you can talk to people who are worth like $500 million, literally, if you just talk to them like a person. Like it's so surprising how a lot of at least in this field, right? If you just treat people like a person, you can actually get a lot of meaningful insights from it. So that's just my opinion. It's like doing your research, you know, just trying to talk to them like a person, right? Like, hey, how I saw this, right? I was interested in what you think, or like how this went, right? Versus like, hey, can you give a referral or something? Like hey, I'm a university grad, I'm doing this. Can you like help me out? Like try to show interest in the people. I think they're more likely to respond very often, I think.
definitely. Yeah, it's been it is kind of, I think I mentioned this earlier as well, like networking is becoming more and more important, I think, even at like the entry levels. It's not that referrals never helped. It was just more like they do help, but they're not necessarily the most efficient use of your time. But nowadays, it's, I don't know, like a lot of the, just anecdotally, a lot of the people that I know who like got great offers were also like networking really hard, and usually like certain leads led to kind of opportunities. Sometimes even opportunities that aren't like available to sort of to just like just everyone else. So really great
Yeah.
insights. Yep.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. I feel by networking, you can access some job opportunities that not show up on paper. Sometimes, say for example, I got a speaker role, like speaking opportunity previously, that there's no application open at that time because we attend a coffee chat and show my interest, and we later on get to chat on that. So yeah, I feel like network in general helps you to get more opportunity, especially in a competitive job market.
Definitely. Yeah, maybe we'll do a networking event soon. I think that's a good idea. Here's another question from Isaac. Isaac asks, "What was your first week on the job like? I'm sort of nervous. Did you go straight to coding day one, or were there lots of HR procedural stuff?" I guess I'll even expand on this question to like, how can you make good use of maybe like your onboarding or like the first few months at a company?
I guess I can start with this one. Personally, my first week was really slow because I couldn't get my laptop on time. So instead, I actually tried to, I guess, get to know people who worked on different things within the wider org, who was responsible for what on a high level. Because I didn't really, I think starting in your first week, it's really high expectations to actually like go deep into code itself and deep into the product itself. So I actually spend more time figuring out how is my org structured, how is my wider org structured, and what does like who my teammates interact with outside the team. Like what are the points of contact so that in case you do get like you do run into projects later, it's easier to know who to contact rather than wait at that point and then try to figure out who to contact. So the first week it's good to know, like, just trying to figure out how is your org structured, how are like your team, how is your team structured and things like that. Yeah. I definitely did not dive deep into code.
Yeah, and also get to know people who you work with, have a coffee chat with them, have a one-on-one, and get to know their interests, their preferred way of communication. Are they introverted, extroverted? Do they like to talk in the meeting or they like text message? I remember, like, yeah, some people are introverted. They don't like meetings. They like chat. So get to know their preferred way of communication. So it really helps you communicate easily when you work on a more complex project.
Yeah, I think to add, like I literally wrote my team's like onboarding docs. I didn't have one before. Like
Wow.
they pretty much you want to. I think you want to get to know everyone, right? Schedule one-on-one coffee chats with everyone in your team, type of thing, right? Like to be honest, even talking to the seniors, man, they don't spend that much time even coding. They spend most of the time again write the docs and then they implement the thing like maybe like 25% of the time. A lot of times it's hunting down who has the resources, what are the priorities, and things like that. I think looking at things at a higher level lets you ramp up faster in like a weird paradox way, right? Unless you're like very focused on technical stuff, like there's probably certain jobs where you probably have to be like super technical with something, right? But I think as a new grad, they don't expect you to know anything. So like focus on learning about the company.
Definitely. Yeah, I do think like it is kind of a superpower being a new person on the team. Just because like you're always the junior, and so then if you ask a dumb question here and there, that's fine. I mean, in general, that should be fine, anyways. But especially, I think like your first 3 months on the job is where you can ask sort of, like your like the dumb questions that maybe you can't ask when you're 2 years in. Chilled beer asks, Gervasio, are you a staff engineer? Did you? I don't know. I mean, I haven't
No,
talked
no,
to you
I
in
don't. No,
I haven't
no, I
talked to
wish,
you
man.
in maybe a week. Maybe by then you climbed the
Oh
ladder.
man, a straight L3, man. No.
Gotcha. Let's see. Some more questions from the chat. Um, this is, I guess, for everyone. This is from Matthew. What is a feature that you're most proud of shipping in your career so far, with as much or as little detail as you like? I know we're all kind of early, but still.
I mean, I guess I can start, man. I didn't ship anything. I just started 2 months ago. I haven't shipped anything there. But in terms of internships, though, I think one of the coolest things I think was finding a cool way to annotate a lot of training data using some open source models. So I think Meta, they released something called like the segment anything model, SAM, and they have a second version out. So I was running into this problem where you didn't have enough training data, and it takes like a week to annotate like maybe like 100 or so photos, right? So instead, what I did is created this HPC type of workflow, and you can annotate all the data using the machine learning model, and then you can I just made a tiny program to scroll through it and delete all the extra mask that it kind of creates. And I kind of for me, I was super practice. That was like a super cool thing.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. Anything else the panelists have? I mean, I can share some stuff. Actually, can I share stuff? I don't know. It's always tough with NDAs, isn't it? You kind of, you're scared to even say, I get it. But thank you for the question. I think it is a really good question. I wish I can talk more about stuff sometimes whenever those questions come up, but you just never know. So some more questions. All right, I guess we can go back to, I'm going to go back to our prep questions for a bit, and then we'll look at chat again for questions from the audience. Another question I wanted to ask is, what has been a defining point, or what are some defining points during your time in school or as a professional that kind of like led you to where you are today?
I think for me, one of the defining points, I guess that has helped me a lot, like to be where I am right now, is there are some classes at my university where people pick particularly avoid, and they're notoriously hard in the sense, like, people just don't want to take it and just want to skip those. I ended up taking those not knowing what exactly I was going into. And I guess the thing that I did come out of it was like-minded people who bonded over trauma. And and those networking connections kind of help a lot, because it does reinforce your bonds over like computer science, and like talking about again like mentorship and job hunting and leads and stuff like that. So I think the friends are made along and the connections are made along with struggling through harder classes was a defining moment for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, good to hear. Good to hear you got stuff out of your classes. That's not my experience, but no, I'm just kidding. Not all bad, Sorry, Annie, didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't say it's a defining point, but I think it's a very important moment is when I first joined Google and when I first met my first manager in Google. At that time I just on board, but somehow the first project was very hard and everything is new and it's quite big. I have to deliver everything by myself, and I wasn't sure if I can do that, and I was a little nervous. I'm not sure if I can deliver by the timeline. So I shared that anxiety with my manager, and he encouraged me. He said, "Oh, Annie, I believe that you can do it. You're capable of this." I think that encouragement really means a lot. Maybe it's a little bit, it sounds a little bit cliche, but it definitely means a lot to me, because I struggle with imposter syndrome a lot along my journey, and I try my best to be more confident as an engineer all the time. And my manager's encouragement definitely means a lot to me at that time, and that really encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone, to be more brave, have more courage, and challenge myself, take up more challenge. So I feel I start to, build up the momentum to step out of my comfort zone, and I delivered the project that really I built up more confidence by doing more, and I built up more momentum and willing to challenge myself more. And that's probably why I started public speaking this year, and I tried this panelist. I think that definitely have a really huge positive impact in my career and my life.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, it's really cool whenever you hear about like managers making like a really big difference in folks' lives. Because like I think if you're online a lot, like I am, you only hear about like the bad stories, like, oh, my manager screwed me somehow or whatever. But like honestly, most people are pretty great. I mean, I've only ever had great managers, and my current manager's amazing as well. So I don't think any. Yeah, I think that's definitely. I love hearing encouragement like that because like you just hear about so many bad things, and it is always a risk to like switch teams. And I think the biggest risk is always like how well are you going to get along with your manager, or how good of a manager do you have? Kind of is in my opinion one of the biggest risks to like switching companies and teams. So, um, but yeah, it makes a huge difference. I think I definitely agree with you there. Anything folks want to add with regards to that?
Sure, I guess you can say one last thing. I don't know what pivotal moment, man. I was like basically a coin toss away from either go straight for like biological sciences, try to go to med school, or just do like computer science stuff, right? Um, took this course called Comp Sci 110 with Gregor. If you know who this guy is, he actually created like a programming language paradigm. It's actually cool, right? So took an intro to CS class. I liked it, bro. Switched my choice at like literally at the last minute, and then now here we are.
That's cool. So yeah, getting into or switching into CS or taking that first class. Yeah, I love stories like that too. It's great. And that class at UBC at least is a legendary class slash course. So really cool. I guess yeah, another follow up to that I guess I had is like, are there any notable failures from which you learned a valuable lesson?
If you ask me my failure, I feel like I failed interviews so many times before, especially in university. Like, there's OA, I failed many OA, failed many interview. I think the lesson I learned is I need to reflect on why I know there definitely has luck to do with it, but you need to reflect, is there you're not good at programming, or you're not good at system design, or any technique you're not sure. So you learn from the lesson that can help you become successful in the future, right? So reflect on failure is very important. But yeah, I know if you I couldn't, it's hard for me to remind to think of a notable failure. Just if I look back, I can see so many failure for interview and OA. Yeah, it's a journey, I feel.
I
Definitely.
think adding on to that, in my second year, I wasn't really like exposed to like how crucial like interviews were in CS. Like, I barely knew what was lead code and what was system design. Actually, I've never heard of system design in my second year, right? And I think like before getting to the actual thing, I think what is valuable is treat every interview like as if like even if you aren't going to be taking the job and you have an interview, uh, just try to do your best. Try to do your best in terms of technicality, or at least getting to know the interviewer. Either way, it doesn't matter what, but like put in like 100% of it, because you never know what that connection might lead to outside of just like generally in the future. And yeah, like, and also prepare and time manage for things accordingly, because you don't want your interview to be landing in between two final exams and failing that. So
Definitely. Yeah, I think yeah, I'm similar. There's like so many failures that it's hard to pick one. I guess like the main lesson for me is just like like understand it's part of a process. Like it's definitely not a bad thing to fail, especially when you guys are, like failing an interview here and there is not. It might feel it will feel like a big deal, especially if it's like a role that you really wanted. But there's more opportunities sometimes just around the corner without and it'll kind of as long as you keep going and I mean this sounds cheesy, but like as you know the number of people I hear that like almost gave up and then but didn't and just stuck just kept going enough to get that one offer, and then that one offer is like an amazing offer. It's like it didn't all the suffering is worth it. For example, yeah, I mean at some point like it does work out, I think. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Um, yeah, I mean, I think for me, even this week, I can think of like some things that I that I failed at. So Very cool. Next question. This is kind of, let me see here. So this is from Chilled Beer. Can people from no-name universities land new grad jobs at big tech? For example, Amazon/Google in Canada.
I think for
Yeah, I think
sure. Oh, sorry, William, you go
it's
ahead.
no, it's fine. I know someone who's literally from some university I never heard of, and they're literally at Google, so like they literally got it in undergrad. So I mean, it's yeah, definitely. I think I answered in chat too.
Yeah, I think it's just I don't know. I always feel bad whenever like it makes me sad whenever someone asks that, like, oh, I'm at like so and so uni. Do I have like no shot at so and so company? And it's like almost certainly not true. But there's like lots of reasons why you might think so. Um, I don't know. I do think like the culture of a school makes a huge difference. Like, for example, like UBC and U of A, like those are very comparable schools. Like in my opinion, they're like just as good as each other in computer science. U of A definitely better in some areas, UBC definitely better in some areas. But the culture of the students, I think, is very different in the sense that um, like UBC, I think like there's very much this like idea of and there's lots of inspiration of folks like getting to really great companies, really great roles, doing really well in the job search, but those folks work just as hard and are just as skilled or as like have just as much struggles or whatever someone like maybe Sanjeev who went to U of A, and like there's less of a culture of that, I think, at that school, at least from the folks that I talked to. So it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think school. I think people don't believe me when I say this, but I genuinely don't think school matters very much at all. Especially if you're just like trying to work for big tech. Like school's almost like irrelevant, I think. As long as you're getting like a bachelor's degree, I think that's kind of a key metric. But otherwise, like a bachelor's degree in like computer science or maybe like engineering. But otherwise, like I don't know, it doesn't seem that important to me. So I don't know if folks have thoughts about that.
I mean, some companies definitely have a hiring bias, locally speaking. Like, big schools like Waterloo, UBC, U of T, especially like outside of Canada, they definitely have a wider reach. But within Canada, I think most universities are pretty much treated equally. It just depends on the experience and what the team's looking for.
Yeah. I mean, but I will say, like, even it's, I don't know, like, there's people, like, at any big company, there's, like, um, yeah, like, people from, like, just any Canadian university you can think of. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm yet to be convinced of it. I do think Waterloo has a distinct advantage just because they have specific, like, Waterloo actually has, like, certain companies actually have spots dedicated to Waterloo students. Like that is a real advantage for sure. And there's also like off-season internships available for Waterloo co-op that other schools don't have. But otherwise, I don't know.
Um, I also want to share that just my teammate in Google, like my teammate, she doesn't have a computer science degree. She's not even from computer science. She worked from different company. I forgot what she originally was. She doesn't even know how to code before. She
Oh
just tried
wow.
to automate the process by building some like writing some Python script to improve her company's workflow and slowly learn more coding and then work at different role at Google and then switch job later to software engineer role, and eventually we are like teammates. So people come from all different background in industry, I feel.
Definitely. Michelle says L for boot camp grads. Oof. Yeah, I don't know. I think boot camp's a bit. I would not recommend a boot camp in 2024, if I'm being honest. For entry level, especially. Well, I mean that's only an option for entry level, but anyways, any more questions in chat that I want to get to? So this one is from Matthew. He asks, during your coding interviews for your current companies, Were you able to recognize the problems, or did you struggle to solve the problems?
I can go ahead. Oh, sorry, Will.
Fine.
But yeah, some of the companies were question like they asked very common questions like, what you would see on lists and things like that. But there were definitely a couple of companies that had a variation of a question that I've never solved or never seen before. And I guess given the time constraints and just the nervousness, I was, I couldn't solve it at all. But I think what matters more in those cases are how you communicate and how you think. It doesn't matter. I mean, obviously it matters. It matters to a certain point where you do have to get the working solution, but at a new grad level or an internship level, there's a relatively lower bar. In case it's a harder question, it's more about how you approach the problem and how you vocalize your thoughts towards a solution, right? You can there's been many cases where I've passed an interview, but I've never ended up finishing the solution because I was just vocalizing my thoughts and how I would be getting to this step by step or piece by piece. And the interviewer agreed, and it was more like, okay, do they know what I'm trying to do? Do they actually know, rather than just sit idle and think in your head itself? So yeah, I've failed many interviews in terms of the questions itself, but I've still been I was still able to move on to the next rounds.
Awesome.
Yep. I think it was I think they were talking about, do you guys, I think, recognize the problems, right? I think it was the original question, something like that, right? In your interview, I mean, all my interview questions were most of the time they were very unique. There's maybe one or two where it's straight from the code. Most of them I kind of had a spin to it, so it's not like you can necessarily memorize it. But I did notice a lot of times that you do recognize how to solve it based off the practice that you did, if that's the question, anyways. So yeah, but anyways, like Sanjeev said, right? It's basically articulating your thought process that's really important to them. And I think that's the main thing to do, especially when you're faced with a new problem. You want to vocalize and start in an ordered manner instead of jumping straight into coding something that you're not quite sure and not really being communicated.
Yeah, when you say recognize a problem, I consider it as you do recognize a pattern. Is this something? Do you recognize a algorithm? And then if you cannot recognize it immediately, can think about how do you break it down to smaller problem that's familiar to you. And some problem it's very ambiguous. Like for example, design problem. It's very ambiguous. So it's a lot as previous other panelists said, it's a lot about communication. How do you identify the detail by communicate with interviewer, and eventually you abstract this ambiguous problem to a more concrete algorithm problem or design problem, and then solve it by simplify it and apply the familiar pattern and then apply those techniques to solve it. So that's how I view it. And definitely communication is very, very important. It's a lot about, because essentially interviewer, you probably work with your interviewer in the future. So you get to know how to communicate with them in a good way.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you for the insights. Yeah, definitely agree with most of those as well. This is a question from Matthew. He asks, do you use AI coding assistants in your job? If so, how specifically do you use them, and how helpful do you find them? I'm actually curious about this as well. I mean, I can start with this one. For me, I don't use any AI coding assistants other than Copilot. And Copilot, I think, is I don't know, I'm still not super convinced of the impact, but there's some numbers, at least internally, I think that shows it does improve your efficiency. So I think it's probably just good to have, even if you don't lean on it too heavily. I can't speak to the other chat sort of LLMs and such. I find them to be I don't know, every time I use them, they're just very, very wrong. Maybe that's different now. Maybe I'm using an outdated chatbot. I'm not sure, but yeah, curious what the panelists think about that.
I guess you can start yeah, Instacart's very accepting, I think, of AI tools. Without revealing too much, so yeah, there's definitely access to things similar to that, right? I don't use it to generate most of my code at all, but I do use it for various tasks. Whether, for example, SQL, just writing down hey, I want to try the sequel, give me an idea for this, right? Or hey, I have this type of design. Can you kind of describe to me at a very high level what we're kind of looking at? And then I don't really take it for a fact, but what I do is I reference it as a starting point, and I basically edit most of the lines, or I look through the code base myself, right, and just use it as a guide, because I think it's good for guiding you, I think, but you shouldn't really just blindly trust the outputs, at least.
Yeah, agreed with that. I don't know. I know, like, I've even heard some people like literally put code, like, at least at our company, you're not supposed to like put code snippets and like even like the wrapper that we have around certain LLMs, but like I've heard people say like, oh, I'm in a new code base. I just put like the whole thing in a chatbot or in like a, I don't know, chat GPT or whatever, and asked it to describe it to me. That sounds scary. Like, I don't know if I would trust that, but it's like people do it. It's crazy. Like, I don't know. Maybe I already feel like the old person, like the grumpy old person saying, no, this isn't, I don't know. I'm just not sold, but I don't know. Hopefully it does get better though. I can see it, like the potential is there. The potential is huge for like efficiency improvements. So yeah. I think a second part of that question had to do with internal tooling, or did I? Let me just double check the question. I thought I saw a question about internal tooling. I guess I can ask it anyways. Like, how do you guys feel about working at like big tech companies, like in terms of the infrastructure and the tooling, compared to maybe like smaller companies?
I think it's a complex beast of its own that requires additional learning.
That's true. Yeah. I mean that's so true. Like that piece about whenever people say like, oh, you have to get really good at learning, that almost has never to do with like, oh, you got to learn how to write Java and you're good, or whatever language. It's almost always you got to learn how to like use whatever tooling that's available. Like that's a whole other, imagine like an internal React or some wrapper around AWS or whatever that's like unique to your company. Like you gotta be able to use those. So the learning piece is never ending for sure, just because there's so much out there. But yeah, I'm not sure how that's different from smaller companies. So,
Oh, I did work at a startup. So basically build everything end to end. It's very fun. It's a lot of growth. It's very fast paced. Yeah, don't have many internal tools because basically build everything. for yeah. Yeah, but for big tech, it really depends on the role. If you're customer facing product or internal product. So for customer facing products, the pipeline is more complex. Sometimes you have to babysit the pipeline and you have on call, need to like maintain the maintenance. And for internal, it's different. Yeah, I guess I feel like every team is different, even for big tech. Yeah, even for the same company, different team, I feel it's a little bit different experience. But yeah, for startup, it's very fun, fast, and a lot of learning.
That's awesome. Would you ever like go back to, or want to go back to like that type of work coming from Google?
Oh, I don't know. Depends. I enjoy current growth and everything, but I don't know about the future. Yeah.
Nice. I love it. This is a good question from Han. Do any of you guys have experience or hear stories about people landing a new grad job that doesn't match past internships? For example, you intern as a front-end dev and then find a new grad role as a software developer in testing, or vice versa.
Yeah, actually. So my first internship at Siemens was not related to my internship at Apple in terms of the work I did, but it was actually related to what my internship manager did when he first started his career. So, like, I did completely, like, in that sense, I guess I did an internship at Apple that was completely something like pretty new and not related to what I did at Siemens at all, right? So it was still a lot of new learning, and maybe I guess the languages were the same, but just the actual domain of it was completely different. But I guess the interviewer, in this case, my manager and the team, they just noticed my resume out because it kind of resonated with what my manager started out his CS career with. So in that sense, it related to him, which is, again, it's on a blind side because I would never, like, I wouldn't know who is hiring me and what their experiences are. So it worked out completely by luck in the sense that, oh, we had something cool to relate with, and that was it. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's a really cool story. Yeah, very interesting. I think those like yeah, I know Apple specifically too. It's very specific to your previous experience that they care a lot about. So very different from other big tech, from what I know, where it's mostly just like we code and yeah, like maybe some system design. So anything else folks would want to add to that? Not really. I mean, I guess like to answer the question myself, I mean, I feel like I see that all the time, like where like someone works in like a certain area, and then does like their next internship somewhere else, or not somewhere else, but like in another area. Like at our company, for example, you can actually, do an internship as a front end developer, but then switch on your return offer to like back end, or switch teams from like a product facing role to like infra. Um, Typically, big tech is actually very good about that. Yeah, you just kind of have to like find the role, like find an opportunity that's available, that maybe will let you switch. I will say, like, I think once you start your career, like even as like a new grad or kind of as you get more experience, that's when you like tend to specialize more and more. But also even in those cases, like your network can kind of make a big difference anyways, even if it's like a different type of role. So um, yeah, I would say like don't be afraid to like try a bunch of things while you're an intern, because that's really the best time to do it. So okay, let's get back to some of our questions. I'll look back at the chat in a few minutes. So here's another question for folks. What do you recommend for those who are currently feeling despair or are grinding but seemingly without result?
I guess I could start with this. I think for me, when I was at that point, I think it was a lack of motivation that set me like behind and like, just getting into my head with the whole hiring process and like, I guess, pushing myself down. So I think having a support system, like, thankfully I had my friends and family trying to help me down, and people like talk to people outside of CS as well, because sometimes they don't even know what's going on with like the job search for your field, and they honestly sometimes give you like advice outside the box, like, because you would be like within a bubble, and you'd probably be talking to just other people going through the same thing, and that can push you down sometimes. So definitely get out there and talk to people outside of CS as well. And another thing, reiterating from what I said at the start of this panel, get out of toxic communities. There are a lot of them out like online on Discord and Reddit, and you see people like, who are not contributing in a meaningful, productive way, but they're just rather than bragging and things like that. And that can really push people down, especially if you're online chronically. And that's when you probably have to go into healthier communities, or maybe stay away from just, Reddit and Discord at certain time for a break, and then get back into it later. So take meaningful breaks and, spend time with people.
Yeah, I think
I love
Sanjeev's
that.
yeah, no, Sanjeev, you're yeah, speaking facts though. I think I agree. When I was in that, I just paid like multiple times while doing the new grad search, right? I think it's definitely think of your mind like a garden. The more time you some little weeds will fly into the garden, maybe populate it, but you got to take it out as soon as you can, right? Or if you surround yourself with all those weeds, then eventually they'll infest your garden, right? So you want to try to separate yourself from a lot of that negative light, and just focus on outside. All right, it's not just CS that's cooked; it's a lot of other places too. There's different ways to cope with it for sure.
Yeah, I love how the other panelists say, and I definitely feel that that's like that grinding moment, especially when I was trying to pass the interview looking for a job. Like previously, I got into Amazon waiting list and I got removed from it because they stopped hiring, and I got offer from Google, but they stopped, like they canceled it because they have hiring freeze due to pandemic, and I really want to looking for a job and I couldn't find one, and I feel really desperate at that time. And what really helps me, like other than like community support, like supporting system, is really focusing on the growth, focusing on like how yourself instead of the goal, because not associated with the goal to your self-worthy, and believe that have confidence in yourself, and focus on the moment, focus on where you like how you grow from yesterday, and focus on all those positive moments that really help someone feel better and enjoy this. Yeah, not pay too, like not just just let the result determine what kind of person you are, right? So focus on the journey. So that's what I learned from my experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love all the responses. Yeah, it is a grind. There's gonna be like low moments for sure. I think the I don't know, just the number of DMs I get about like people who would like email who like message me and be like, "Oh my God, I'm literally like I've applied to hundreds of jobs. I'm getting like barely any responses, I'm about to give up. What do I do?" And then like a week or so after they get like an amazing offer, like it's just like out of nowhere. So like, things are there's very often things are just like right around the corner. You just have to kind of get through the tough moments, I think. And I hope some of what the panelists what the tips help with kind of getting to that point. Um, Also, I didn't know Will was a poet. Talking about gardening, gardening our mind. I like it. Uh, Very cool. There's actually an interesting question in the chat that I wanted to get to, which is this is from Chilled Beer. Uh, is there a way to network with recruiters from big tech? Because most of the time they just ignore my LinkedIn DMs.
Yeah, I can start with this. So I guess the way I did network with recruiters from big tech and other companies were like, for me, it was kind of easier in the sense that I was limited to just Canada. So like I wasn't targeting roles in the US. So whenever I did see like a cool new grad role that just opened up from a company that was like relatively big, obviously I applied early, but the better way was like the thing that I did right after applying is actually going on LinkedIn, trying to find a university recruiter or a recruiter that was based in the area that I was applying to. Say if the role was in Toronto, I was trying to find an Ontario recruiter for that same company or a university recruiter in general. And there are third-party tools and websites that help you find like emails of companies, or at least they have like a regular pattern matching. Like, they have a templated email. So you could just find their first name and last name and put that and use that as an email. So yeah, I was targeting companies that had open roles that just opened up in Canada, and then try to find the recruiter, like try to find who's the recruiter on LinkedIn, and then using tools like Hunter.io and Apollo and Rocket Reach to like actually go find their company email. And it is kind of, I guess it does take a while and it takes a lot of time. And the funny part is I did this as a form of procrastination from studying, so it worked. So yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and also make sure your profile is prepared, like have a complete profile and have everything on it. And there's a trick, you can put your resume in your description. So when recruiter open your profile, they see your resume, they have more information about your experience that maybe increase the chance.
Do you mean like on LinkedIn, I guess?
Yeah, I
Oh,
think if you put it on the Google Drive and share the link to it, they can open
oh,
it. So if the more complete your profile is, it has more information, it demonstrate more impact of you, more skills of you, you get more chance, right? So it's important to be prepared and put as much things on your profile to help recruiter get to know you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know about that. That's a pretty good tip.
Yeah, I think I can add to, like, I got my job from I just some of my jobs, right, from cold emailing, right, and just being like very short, kind of like how Sanjeev was saying, just gonna be short and concise, have the resume there, and yeah.
Yeah, I think you got your role via cold email. You said. Oh, never mind. Okay, okay, never mind. Yeah, I will say networking, I think, is more and more important. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know. It depends on the person, I guess. But I think it's not necessarily what people want to hear, but also it's kind of, if you're willing to put yourself out there, that's it helps. Like a recognizable face is always nice, even from like years ago, So let's see here. We're actually nearing the end. So if let me just double check if there's any other good questions I want to see here. I'm sure I missed a bunch. I mean, things were going kind of fast for a while. Yeah, I think I'll ask some of the other things on here. Yeah, I guess before we conclude, any last words of advice or encouragement for folks who are early in their career and uncertain about their future or having a tough time looking for their next role?
Yeah, I can. It's a very loaded question. It's a very loaded question, right? Where I think we focus a lot of times on what we can't control anymore, things that are already passed, and it tends to bog you down very, very often, right? So I think it's focusing on what you can do versus what already happened. I think is really the mindset to kind of push towards. Just keep moving forward, right? But that doesn't mean you can't spend time to maybe grieve or be sad for a bit, right? But it does mean that you can't just keep focusing on what you can't control anymore. That's really it. You're not the sum of your failures necessarily, right? But they do contribute to you learning for sure.
Oh, yeah, I would say also stay positive and be comfortable with uncertainty because life is full of uncertainty. It doesn't mean that if you find a job, that means you're certain. You're still facing uncertainty at work, uncertainty at things. You just need to keep exploring and keep like self-aware, like understand what's more important to you, what do you want, and then be comfortable with uncertainty and stay positive. I think that's really help have a positive mindset so that you can keep going. I'm not sure about the other panelist.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. And I can think of no other better way than to end it there with some words of encouragement. So, thank you everyone for joining us. Of course, thank you so much for to the panelists, Annie, Will, and Sanjeev. Yeah, I guess we've been streaming for almost I think over an hour 20 minutes, so definitely a bit longer than I was thinking. So thank you for putting in some more time, and thank you for everyone for being here today. So yeah, I guess have a great rest of your night. I'll talk to you all later.